Aloha, welcome back to Aina Bear Farm. We're going to do a little bit of a different video than what we've been doing lately. It's a little bit more instructive. It's a video that I was asked to do for a group here on the Big Island that's specifically about nitrogen fixing plants and the role that they play in agriculture and ecosystem reforestation. So on that note, this is going to be kind of everything that I know about nitrogen fixing and nitrogen fixing plants and how I use them here. I'm holding in my hand what we often call sleeping grass here. It's very similar. If you're watching this from Florida, you guys have the sunshine mimosa. It's a ground cover plant that makes these really pretty little puffball flowers. The bees love it and everything. We hate it here because it's full of nasty little prickers, and we don't have the version here without the prickers, at least not naturalized. So you'll find this everywhere. It's a weed, grows all over the place, and it's doing a very important function, and it is doing something we call fixing nitrogen. And so I'm going to really quickly cover what that means. So if you're an aficionado on that, but you want to skip to the part where I talk more about nitrogen fixing plants, skip ahead till the next frame of the video and keep following along. But if you want to learn more about nitrogen fixing, what it really means is that the atmosphere has a small amount of nitrogen in it. And it's in a particular chemical form that is not readily available to plants. There's really no way they can use it. However, nitrogen is something that is very important for plant development and growth. That's why when you buy a fertilizer, you'll see an NPK rating. The N stands for nitrogen. It's such an important element for plant growth that it comes first on the fertilizer bag. So that's one way we can get nitrogen to our plants, but there are some plants that can actually kind of create their own nitrogen out of the atmosphere. And that's what we're talking about when we say a plant fixes nitrogen. So these are special plants that what they do is in their roots, they have they create a special symbiotic relationship with bacteria in the soil. And those bacteria form these little bacterial colonies around the roots, and they start basically breathing the air in and taking the nitrogen. I'm going to mess up the chemistry of it, but it's something like nitrate in the atmosphere and turn it into nitrite. It might be the opposite. I might be completely wrong. But there's some chemistry that happens there where the form of nitrogen gets changed, and we say fixed, because it's changed into a form that the plants can now utilize to grow. So these bacteria do a lot of the work. The nitrogen ends up in the soil available to the plants. They're able to absorb it and use it for growth. So I pulled this sleeping grass out to show you guys on video because it's one of the plants where you can readily see the nodules. So we'll take a close-up look at these. You can see what I'm talking about here. A lot of times people get confused and they think that the plant is what fixes the nitrogen, but you might be able to see these little white kind of bulbils hanging off the roots there. Those are the nitrogen fixing nodules, and that's kind of where the magic happens. So you see a lot of weedy plants like this pop up in spots maybe where there's bare ground or where the ecosystem has been damaged, because their role in nature is really to come in and not just cover the space, but to start putting nitrogen back into the soil, kind of supercharging it for other plants to grow up afterwards, and it becomes a succession of species from that point on. So these early emergent, early succession plants are often very weedy because they make their own nitrogen. They can grow wherever, and they grow really fast because of that. And so for some of us who are trying to keep like really tidy lawns or garden areas, we're constantly annoyed. We have to like keep cutting them down, or they're popping up in like weird places like cracks in sidewalks where nothing else will grow because they're fixing their own nitrogen. So I want to compare this plant, which for us in Hawaii is pretty obnoxious, and I try to pull it out as soon as I see it because once it really spreads, it's hard. If you step on it, it's awful. If you try to grab it or you grab it accidentally when you're trying to weed something else, it's awful. I'm going to compare that to what is behind me, the nitrogen fixing perennial peanut, which we purposely put in as a ground cover here in lots of sections on our farm, does the same thing. It has the bacteria around the root nodule. So all of this ground cover is pumping nitrogen into the ground. It's also keeping the ground covered. It's a strong plant. It's pretty drought resistant. It doesn't require fertilizer or anything like that. I mean, it's really kind of making its own. So these are special plants that can be really useful to us as forest restoration specialists or agroforestry growers, or anybody who's just trying to maintain their property in a sustainable way. And one of the things I've noticed, all of the areas where I have the perennial peanut, all the other plants in those areas tend to thrive. They tend to be more resilient. They tend to have healthier, more robust growth, especially like if I compare them to the same plant on a different part of the property that doesn't have this ground cover. And that's because some of this nitrogen becomes excess, and it can actually be taken up by neighboring plants. And so it's not just good for the plant that is, has the relationship with the bacteria itself, it's good for all the plants in the area, especially if you come in and you cut this. So if I was to like mow that with a lawnmower or something, all that nitrogen in those roots that is more or less there for the perennial peanut, it becomes kind of extra. And now it's free to be absorbed by any other plants. And so we literally kind of dump it into the soil. It's like free fertilizer. So that's ground covers. I'm going to show you in a couple of different spots on the property how we use other nitrogen fixing plants as part of our succession to create a healthy ecosystem here. So let's go take a look. Okay, so here I want to talk about a really special plant that we are using in a forest restoration area. So on our property, when we got here, there's acres of invasive guinea grass, monoculture, clumping, 8-foot tall grass, no native plants, no diversity, pretty sad ecosystem really. And we wanted to change that. We wanted to add native plants and restore the soil to a better, healthy system. And one of the first ways we do that is with nitrogen fixing plants like the pigeon pea here. So you may have heard of pigeon pea before. You may have even eaten pigeon peas. You can eat them dry, you can eat them green like sweet peas in a way. It's a really great legume plant that fixes nitrogen, grows really fast. I believe all legumes fix nitrogen, or at least the majority of them. They have that special relationship with the bacteria in the soil. These I planted 6 months ago, and you can see how big they already are. This is like one season's worth of growth. Super easy to get your hands on some pigeon pea seeds and just plant them all over the place. So we've got 2 dense rows of it to kind of like shade in and mother in this reforestry area that we're starting with here. And you can see behind me, you may have even noticed it, it's hard to see, it blends in really well, but this is Koai'a. This is our native acacia here in Hawaii, one of them, and it's a tree that's valued for its timber, and it's a really important tree for native ecosystems here, for birds and insects and just all kinds of other life. If I tried to stick this Koai'a out here just by itself, it would not be happy. Koai'a trees, they don't grow in a in a pasture of grass just by themselves. They grow at the drip line of other Koai'a trees, and they're kind of nursed by their parent trees and by other trees in the forest until they're big enough to kind of emerge and be strong trees on their own. The interesting thing is that Koai'a is itself a nitrogen fixer. So I wanted to show this because it's a really interesting relationship. This is a fast-growing, early succession species that's going to come up, do its job, and I mean, you could keep a pigeon pea around for maybe 4 or 5 years, but most of the time, you just let them do this, cut them down, maybe get a second growth out of them, cut them down again, and that's it. The Koai'a is obviously going to be a big tree. I mean, they can be 80 feet tall, still fast growing, but they're not an early succession type of nitrogen fixing tree that we would use in a system like this. We wouldn't come out and spread Koai'a tree seeds all over the place. I mean, you could try, but you wouldn't get this kind of productivity. This is an early succession type of nitrogen fixer. This is like a later succession nitrogen fixer, but it still plays that really important role in the native forest of continuing to pump fertilizer into the ground and support neighboring trees. In fact, I've got a neighboring native tree over here I want to talk about now that you've probably also heard of, the iliahi, or the sandalwood. So I might have to peel it back because it's a little smaller. So you can see here, maybe I'll bring this whole thing out of the way. Can we see that there? Yeah? That is our iliahi, which is really happy in the shade there, also growing pretty fast, not at the rate of a nitrogen fixing like tree like koa, but you often hear of koa being paired up with iliahi, pretty close proximity. These are about 6 feet apart right here because they grow up kind of in tandem. The iliahi gets fed by the excess nitrogen of the koa, like we talked about before with the sleeping grass and the perennial peanut. Some of that nitrogen gets shed off, and the iliahi has a special relationship with the koa. They have evolved together to kind of thrive off of each other in that way. I don't know if the koa gets a lot, but I'm sure it gets something from the iliahi. So that's our system. We're using this to get us going, and then those are going to become the later succession species. They're going to stick around for the long term and are going to help us reforest this area. Pretty cool, yeah? Okay, I wanted to show you two of my other really favorite nitrogen fixing trees that we use here on our farm. The first one I'm standing next to here, this lovely lady, is called Gliricidia. It's often referred to as Madre de Cacao, so like mother of cacao plant. It's all over the tropics. It's grown as the shade plant in cacao growing systems, which is actually what I have right here. So cacao growing under the shade of this really nice nitrogen fixing tree, which is now maybe 25 feet tall. And I like this one for a lot of reasons. It grows really fast. You can grow it from a cutting. So if you just get like a woody stick, like 3 feet long, stick it in the ground, you're most likely going to get a good propagation off of that. This tree behind me, that's exactly how I grew it. So now I could take a whole bunch of sticks off of this one, just stick them in the ground all over the place and grow a lot more trees that way. You can also grow it from seed. I've heard that it ends up with a stronger root system when you grow it from seed, and so I've tried that as well with varying success. But grows super fast, which is a trait that a lot of nitrogen fixing trees have. And you've probably heard of Albizia. It's a nuisance plant on the Big Island and other islands in Hawaii because it gets really big really fast, and because of that the woody tissue is soft, and the wind can knock off huge chunks of it. It can come smashing down on your car, on your house, on people, hopefully not. But can be a little bit of a dangerous tree when it's not managed. And so these trees that I'm talking about right now, like I have a lot of management that I intend to do with them. For one thing, I might chop them and just drop them on the ground. Call that chop and drop in permaculture. We're just adding to the forest ecosystem that way and releasing some of the nitrogen into the ground. I might chop them and then send them through the wood chipper and get some wood chip mulch that I put directly around my fruit trees and feed my fruit trees that way. But you just have to be careful because they're fast growing. They can get away from you. You kind of blink and you turn around and it's 25 feet tall and it's creating too much shade. So you kind of have to plan ahead and know how you're going to use them wisely. A lot of times people will just keep cutting them around like head height because they'll just keep sending up new material, but that's a very accessible height to keep them pruned, and then that way they'll never really get out of control. So I talked about the cacao. I've also got this beautiful mangosteen here next to me. Same idea, loves the shade, especially when it's young like this. So I've got another big cacao tree in the background that's just kind of nursing the mangosteen until it's ready to emerge into the sun. And as it gets taller, I kind of prune away more and more of the Gliricidia to open up more sunlight until this tree is kind of strong enough to get more full sun on its own. So we're going to check now the last tree that's on my list today to talk about, and might be my favorite. Not sure. We'll see. All right. This big tree right here might be my favorite nitrogen fixing tree that I use here. This is the ice cream bean. You've probably heard of it for its kind of interesting fruit. It is in the legume family, so it makes these bean pods Sometimes you get the short little fat ones. Sometimes you get the really long crazy ones. But inside there's the sweet kind of fluffy material. Call it ice cream bean. To me, it tastes like wet cotton candy. It's got a sweet taste. I could see kids really liking it, but not my favorite thing to eat. But I love this tree. It grows so big, so fast, and it's so beautiful. The leaves are gorgeous. It makes a really dense shade. You can cut it as much as you want, and it'll keep coming back. Pumps a ton of nitrogen into your system. It's really easy to grow from seeds. So those same bean pods, if you ever at a farmer's market or something and they're selling them, you could probably get like 10 seeds out of one of those pods and just go and stick those in the ground and get you 10 nice big ice cream bean trees. But I just kind of wanted to show this to show off like how huge this is. I planted this as a little tiny seedling stick, probably a 1/4 inch diameter, about 6.5 years ago. It is now several feet in diameter, maybe 2 feet in diameter at the biggest part of the trunk. Its canopy is probably 30, 35 feet high. It's a massive tree, and it's in a spot where I really wanted some shade. I wanted to put some shade-loving plants in this area. I wanted it to feel like a forest. I wanted to block some of the wind coming from the ocean side over here. So it's serving so many functions here. But, you know, just going back to the fact that it grows so fast. Nitrogen fixers, unbelievable how fast they grow. So that can be a really good thing. But like I said, you have to manage it. You have to put it in the place where you want it to be. So to wrap this up, you know, you can see that these are very useful plants and trees in our ecosystems. There's so much more information about nitrogen fixers you can find online. Please, in the comments section, like if you have specific comments, especially if you're here on the Big Island or in Hawaii and you have questions specific to our Aina and how, you know, which plants we can use. I've tried a whole bunch of other plants that fix nitrogen, and I just kind of focused on the ones that I talked about today. But I have experience trying a whole bunch of other things. So please let me know in the comments section if you have questions. I'd love to talk more about it. And yeah, hopefully you will get a chance to use some of these in your system. And if you have already, let me know. Let me know how it's going. And come back and check out more of our videos at Aina Bear Farm. Aloha.